Some of the other slices include interest from investments and toll violation revenue. What jumps out on the expenditure side on the right is a 56% dark blue slice there, and that is debt service for the bonds that BATA has issued to fund construction projects, including for bridge work like the new east span of the Bay Bridge, as well as capital projects funded by the regional measures, as well as some rehabilitation and preservation work. The next two biggest slices are transfers to capital and reserves and toll bridge and tolling operations and maintenance. Next slide, please. In its history, BATA has spent $15 billion on capital projects. And you can see that the pie is outlined. There's a kind of Pac-Man, reverse Pac-Man shaped outline there, which is bridge work. And so about $12.8 billion of this capital investment has gone back into the bridges themselves through the seismic program, the rehab program. Again, that's preservation work to keep the bridges in a state of good repair. And then Regional Measure 1 included the actual construction of some new bridges. Next slide. BATA and Caltrans deliver a lot of different projects on multiple fronts, and this slide just shows an illustration of the different types of projects. The blue dots represent where bridges have been seismically retrofit, and you can be glad to see that all the bridges have been retrofit. The green represent a new bridge, right? So we did see a brand new bridge at the Benicia Martinez, the Carquinez Bridge, and of course the east span of the Bay Bridge. And then the burgundy is where open road tolling projects are underway. And the pink on a few of the bridges there are projects we refer to as bridge forward initiatives that are trying to ease the commute and speed up traffic. Next slide, please. The bridges are, of course, a critical economic lifeline for the Bay Area. They carry workers to their jobs, goods to market, and tourists and residents to the Bay Area's many destinations that are separated by water. This slide shows the volume of vehicle trips in the toll-paying direction, but of course, most trips are two-way. So on any given day, almost 700,000 vehicles cross one of our toll bridges, almost 4 times as many trips as taken by BART for comparison purposes on a typical weekday. And it probably won't come as a surprise that the Bay Bridge, which is the top bar there, that the red bar is the total, the top blue bar is the Bay Bridge. It carries about 1/3 of all of the BATA bridge trips. Next slide, please. So next, we're going to dig into why we're proposing a toll increase at this time. Next slide. So preserving the bridges really is the job number one for BATA. Bridges do need ongoing maintenance every year to keep them in a state of good repair. BATA has been borrowing to keep up with the needed bridge preservation as traffic is down and the cost to collect tolls is increasing. And construction costs have been rising quite a bit faster than inflation, making it even harder to keep up. Next slide. This slide just provides some examples of projects that fall under the definition of bridge preservation. These assets need regular maintenance, and most of this work is invisible to drivers. As you can see, these are really foundations. You can see some structures on the Richmond San Rafael here with workers painting them. Painting is a huge part of what this toll increase will fund. And, there's just a massive amount of steel that needs to be regularly painted to prevent it from rusting and to keep it strong. Next slide. So this slide provides a visual of some of the financial challenges that we're facing as we have this responsibility for bridge preservation. The top line shows the pre-pandemic estimates of bridge toll revenue that was done, in 2019. This is where we anticipated, and it's important to note that a lot of the increase is due to the RM3 toll increases taking effect, and then we did anticipate that we would need to be raising tolls by at least $1 for bridge preservation somewhere around 2027. And the blue bar is where we are now. This is, there's a lot of factors here. There's been lower traffic post-COVID, and then also the shift to electronic toll collection has made it harder to fully recoup the tolls that are owed. Next slide. So BATA does currently borrow to fund bridge rehab. That is something, that's not a great practice. And by raising the bridge tolls, we're going to be able to have ongoing revenue that can be going towards that need. This slide illustrates an example where if we were to borrow again, let's say another $600 million, and we would not be able to pay that off, on an ongoing basis in terms of the principal. We would be looking at only interest, which is shown as this top red bar, and then with a big lump payment in the out years when we would have more capacity to do that. That would cost an additional $690 million. And so it's really not financially responsible for us to keep borrowing to make these investments in critical bridge repairs. And it will require an even larger toll increase for future drivers down the road. Next slide. So revenue from the toll increase will fund projects to preserve and protect the aging bridge structures. And BATA has a $1.9 billion capital improvement plan that we develop in partnership with Caltrans. And it includes, for example, $740 million for steel painting and corrosion protection, and $690 million for bridge integrity, operation, and safety. And I will note that the cable here that's shown, it is not rust. It is a special treatment that was put on originally, and it's supposed to be this color. Next slide. So now let's turn to the details of the toll increase. Next slide. This slide summarizes the toll increase, showing the rate and the year for each. So it is a 50-cent increase that is proposed to start on January 1st, 2026, and then go up by another 50 cents all the way through January 1st, 2030. And so it would be $2.50, but spread over 5 years. You can see on the right-hand side column, it says 3+ multi-axle vehicles. There's also an increase on an axle basis of 50 cents per axle. And for the details on that, you can look at our website. Next slide. Just a little bit of context. BATA's tolls are somewhat low compared to a lot of other major bridges in the US. It is also quite common to do something that we are going to propose, which is having different toll rates depending on how it's paid. And so you can see here, for example, the Chesapeake Bay Tunnel in Maryland and Virginia is $32 off peak. Thankfully, we're not proposing anything of that magnitude at this time, and they have a different toll rate by mail. The Golden Gate Bridge, closer to home, is now at $9.25 for fast track payment, and then they charge $1 extra for paying by mail. Next slide. So an important change that we are proposing is to charge different rates depending on how the toll is paid. For the first time, BATA is proposing to charge a higher rate for tolls paid by invoice. So that is for users of the bridge who don't have fast track. They're not in our system. They don't have a transponder. They're just driving through, and then we will send them an invoice in the mail. That, as you might imagine, has higher costs, and so we are proposing as a way to recoup those costs that starting in 2027, those types of tolls would be charged an extra $1. For license plate account, it would be an extra 25 cents, and that's someone who has an account, but they're not using their transponder. They're just relying on the license plate, and that does have higher administrative costs. You can see here, it's just showing the gradual increase over time. And then at the very last column here is just illustrating where Golden Gate is expected to be in 2028, which is still slightly above the final year of the proposed toll increase for BATA. So we would be at $10.50 with Fast Track, $11.50 with Invoice, and Golden Gate would be slightly higher based on their approved toll rates right now. Next slide. So this chart illustrates the difference of the proposed toll increase, what it will have on the funding available. You probably recognize most of this slide from a few minutes ago. The dashed line here is what we forecast the revenue to be with the proposed toll increase. So you can see we're not getting quite to where we had thought we would be, but we are making a big dent, and this would definitely put us on a much sounder financial footing and enable us to address the bridge's critical needs without having to borrow. Next slide. Next, we take a look at who is using the bridges so we can have a better understanding as to where the impact will be felt. In this map, you can see that many trips originate outside the Bay Area as far as Sacramento, south of San Jose, and east into San Joaquin County. Next slide. Within the Bay Area, bridge use is most common by residents of Alameda County, followed by Contra Costa, Solano, and then San Francisco and San Mateo. Usage is much lower among Santa Clara residents, as well as Marin, Napa, and Sonoma County. The light brown color, just to the left of Solano County, is actually one of the larger slices, and these are all out of region trips. So this is about 13%, which really underscores the importance of the bridges to the overall regional economy in the mega region. Next slide. This pie chart illustrates the frequency of toll bridge trips taken by individual Fast Track accounts and invoice customers from October 2023, which is considered a typical month with no major holidays. And system-wide, what you can see is that almost 90% of bridge customers took fewer than 10 trips in a month, and 80% took 5 or fewer. Next slide. BATA has been taking a lot of steps to lower barriers to Fast Track and reduce toll violation penalties. We have increased access to tags by expanding retail distribution. We have really been improving our multilingual information on our website, increasing options to pay tolls owed with cash. So that would be after the fact. You can actually add value to your Fast Track account with cash. And reducing the financial burdens for establishing and maintaining Fast Track accounts. So we have lowered the deposit that's required, and we are providing better support for invoicing customers and allowing more time to pay where no penalty is required. Again, an initial usage of the bridge without a Fast Track account, you don't get a violation notice, you just get an invoice, and you have a fair amount of time to pay before that turns into a toll violation. Next slide. With respect to affordability, BATA understands that toll increases can impose financial hardship, especially on low-income residents. And in recent years, BATA and MTC have taken steps to lower the cost of transportation overall, including by launching programs to lower costs for low-income households through Clipper Start, which provides transit fare discounts, and the Express Lane Start pilot program on I-880. These programs both provide a 50% discount to customers, and we're working actively to streamline enrollment. Next slide. So if you don't have Fast Track already, please set up an account. You have lots of options, whether online, by phone, by mail, at a Costco or a Walgreens, or at our customer service center in San Francisco, which is open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We are really working on getting more Bay Area drivers signed up for Fast Track through enhanced community outreach, marketing, and expanding access to retail locations for both tag purchases and cash payment. And it's something that we're going to really be working hard at over the next year, because we do want to have as many people as possible on Fast Track so that they can pay that lower Fast Track toll rate and not have the penalty for paying via invoice. That concludes the toll increase portion of my presentation, and I'll send it back over to you, Veronica, to facilitate the Q&A.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for that information, Rebecca. At this time, if you have any questions, webinar attendees, we ask that you please place them in the Q&A box, or if you were watching this on our YouTube live stream, please enter your questions in the comment box on YouTube. As a reminder, we will respond to questions only, so please do not enter comments in the Zoom webinar Q&A box or on the YouTube comment box. If you'd like to submit a comment, please follow the instructions that have been posted throughout tonight's webinar, which I will also go over at the conclusion of tonight's webinar. So with that, let's see. We're going to respond to the first question that we were asked. Rebecca, the presentation refers to the toll increase, but materials so far refer to it as a hike. Is this an intentional change in marketing approach?
No, I think that hike is, a more colloquial term. So I think in our media, we've gone with hike, but they really have the same meaning.
Great. Looks like we have another question. Do other states fast track tags work in California or Easy Pass?
Yes, they do. We have a relationship with other toll agencies, so we do our best to transmit any of those, toll usages or toll bridge usages to those other agencies in other states.
Great. Thank you. All right. I'll go ahead and create some space for attendees who might still be thinking of questions you'd like to ask. So feel free to put them in our Q&A box. All right, it looks like we have a question about what is BATA's statutory authority to raise tolls?
So state law authorizes and indeed requires that BATA raise tolls in order to keep the bridges in a state of good repair. It's in the Streets and Highways Code. So there you are.
It looks like we do want to go back to the question about fast track tags working in California, other states, fast track tags working in California, Easy Pass. So Derek would like to respond to that, our Chief Financial Officer.
Yeah, thanks, Veronica. So the fast track program is really a California program. And so fast track tags across California work at all California tolling properties. We are not interoperable with tags from other things like Easy Pass, and so they would be either invoiced or those folks can set up a license plate account, which some of our visitors do. That actually addresses, I think, Manisha's question as well.
Okay, and for the benefit of reading the question that Derek just referred to, that question from Manisha is, if you charge higher to customers without a tag, will that impact all visitors from outside the region? So that's what Derek was referencing right now. Thank you very much for that. Looks like there's a question about the toll booths being removed. So I'll go ahead and ask that verbally. Can the toll booths be removed like they did on the Golden Gate Bridge?
Hi, Veronica.
Uh,
I'll go ahead and
I
take a stab at this one. Yeah, we are going to talk about this a little bit in the next part of the presentation. We are planning to do that. We refer to it as open road tolling, but it is a project, that's going to take several years. It looks like Peter Lee, who is one of the leads on this, might want to say a word or two.
yes, that is the current plan. We have a project in our capital improvement program to address that specific. So we will be removing booths and converting our system to what is known as an open road tolling program. So it allows you to travel underneath gantries. It'll read your tag, and you'll be able to move through the plazas at freeway speeds.
Great. Peter, I'm going to ask you to stay unmuted because it looks like you want to answer another question about how is the toll roads in Southern California different than the system we have here?
I'll just note they are a separate agency to toll roads in Southern California, but we are interoperable in the sense that they use fast track tags as well as we use fast track tags. And as we mentioned earlier, we coordinate with them so that you don't have to have separate tags, but they're their own entity that manages their own toll roads down in Orange County and Los Angeles and Riverside.
Okay, great. Thanks, Peter. Okay, there's another question from Manish. It looks like 50 cents per year is also not sufficient. So have we thought of 75 cents?
I think the proposal is, what it is right now. And I think we're really trying to minimize the impact on Bay Area residents. We know that, it's a difficult time right now. People have been struggling with inflation and high prices. And so we do think that the proposed increase is going to meaningfully, help us do what we need to do to preserve the bridges. It's true that it doesn't get all the way to where we had envisioned, but we think it's a good approach.
There's a question about, are there no other ways to minimize the cost of maintenance and materials now that there are no toll takers?
I'll take a quick stab at that and see if our CFO has anything to add. I think one of the challenges with the shift to all electronic tolling has been that we need to send invoices in the mail, and that adds quite a bit of administrative cost through having to send the invoice, and then maybe somebody doesn't understand why they get an invoice, and we have higher customer service costs. And so by adding this incremental higher toll that again won't take effect until 2027, we really hope that that will shift more customers onto Fast Track and reduce the administrative overhead. But as it is right now, we're not actually saving more than it's costing us in terms of the salaries that we are saving, right, from toll takers. We still have higher administrative costs associated with the current toll collection. But again, we do hope that having this differential rate is going to help over time. Anything to add, Derek?
No, not really. I mean, we're still doing, again, if we think about what's going on, we certainly don't have the expense of the toll takers themselves. But as long as those facilities are there, we still do need to maintain them appropriately. So we really aren't saving money on that side either.
Okay. We do have a question. Looks like it's for Derek. How does the 50+% debt service compare to other Bay Area transportation bonds?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not, frankly, it's not really comparable, right? If we think about the way that our financials work versus other systems, and I've had the opportunity to work at a couple other systems, including Caltrain and Samtrans. We have an extremely capital intensive system, right? So we issued literally billions of dollars of debt to fund the seismic program, a very expensive east span of the Bay Bridge, and we'll be paying off those bonds until the 2050s. So a very, very long time for the seismic retrofit bonds. And again, a highly capital intensive business, which is very distinct from other kinds of facilities and certainly transit properties in the Bay Area. And the other thing, and the other thing I would just add, and I think we may be able to post a link to this, but our annual comprehensive financial report is available on our website. That is MTC's report. It does include all of the BATA financials in it. And it's also the annual operating capital budgets are also posted. And again, I think a link can be put up for that as well.
Next question. Will it be possible for MTC BATA to divert funding from bridge maintenance to other capital projects?
Short answer is no. Yeah, the law is very clear on this, that the only circumstances by which BATA can raise tolls on its own are for, preservation of the bridges, obligations to debt, to bondholders, and very bridge-specific purposes. So we cannot fund any kind of new transportation project off the bridge, anything like that. Any transit projects, not an option.
Yes, just to clarify, it's okay for bridge capital projects. Yes, that's the intent of the toll increase for bridge maintenance as well as bridge capital.
Right.
These are really terrific questions that we're receiving from attendees. We do have a few more minutes for this Q&A session for questions. So please keep them coming. Tonight, we really do want to answer your questions that you posed that are related to tonight's topic. Let's see, we actually have a little bit more time, and let's see, where will this presentation be posted? We will post that to our website, MTCABAC's website.
And just to add to that, Veronica, we have a page on our website where it has all the information that is related to the toll increase. Is it okay if I put it in the chat?
Absolutely,
Okay.
that'd be helpful. Thank you.
So that's where you'll find a fact sheet, frequently asked questions, etc. So we'll be adding more information like this webinar, the video to that page.
Yep. And Rebecca, I think it would be helpful to also answer some, general questions that we may have heard, not in this webinar, but just some people might have curiosity about if they could use, for example, can they use their commuter benefits to cover the cost of tolls?
Sure. Yeah. Unfortunately, commuter benefits are not, tolls are not an eligible commuter benefit expense. Those, include transit, some bike expenses and parking, but tolls are not an eligible expense right now under the IRS rules.
Thank you. And speaking of expenses, can people write off tolls as expenses on their taxes?
Only if you're a business or self-employed.
Okay. Yeah, Rebecca, there's another question that might be helpful, and it's about you had mentioned that it may behoove people to get a fast track. And so what is BATA doing to make it easier for people to get a fast track tag? Where could they get them from? Where are they sold?
Sorry. Yeah. So, the easiest way is just to order one online. And so that's at Bay Area Fast Track. I think it's .org. Very straightforward, but you can also get them at a lot of Costco locations as well as Walgreens. And actually, I'll put a link that is on our website about the different locations, the different Walgreens. You can look it up and find a place near you. And then at our customer service center at 375 Beale, you can come in there on a weekday and sign up there too.
All right, here's another question that we received. Does the capital program include a bike lane on the west span of the Bay Bridge?
No. So that there is a project, that is in the real planning stages to explore that link. But that would not fall under the definition of this capital improvement plan, which is really about the overall, state of good repair of the bridges, the rehabilitation of the bridges. So, earlier, my colleague Peter Lee talked about capital projects that the bridge preservation projects are considered capital projects, but they are not mobility-oriented capital projects like a new bike bridge, excuse me, a new bike lane on the bridge would be. So that, if we wanted to fund that, that would require different funding.
And to our attendees, just a reminder, please do not submit comments in the Q&A box. If you'd like to submit comments in response to the proposed toll increase, please do so. I will cover this at the end of how you can make comment, but please do not submit them in the Q&A box. Okay, this is a question that I think, well, let me just ask it. So we've heard that Bay Area transit agencies are in financial trouble. So can the bridge tolls be raised to help transit too?
So that's a really good question. And the answer is this toll increase cannot be used to assist with the transit fiscal cliff that MTC, our other affiliate agency, is working very hard to address. The regional measures that voters have approved and that the legislature explicitly authorized do have some funding in them for transit operations, but it's limited. It's specific to certain purposes. And again, the only statutory authority that we have to raise tolls ourselves is for the bridges themselves, not for transit.
Thank you. Next question. Why weren't RMs 1, 2, and 3 and the seismic retrofit toll increases designed to provide for bridge maintenance first before diverting bridge toll revenues to projects not directly related to toll bridges? So Derek or Rebecca, either of you can take that question.
And I think it's, it's a fair question. And it's a policy type of question, right? And as the Director of Legislation and Public Affairs, I certainly, am familiar with those types of questions. And I would say we've also been very involved, right, in the different regional measures. One of the benefits of the regional measures is that by having this revenue source for specific projects that were Bay Area priorities, as well as legislative priorities, the region has been able to attract significant other state funding, federal funding, and so the tolls really have served as a source of for a matching grant. We could have just opted to not do that. But then the Bay Area as a whole, would have probably not been able to advance as many transportation priority projects as we have. We basically would have lost out on a lot of other funding sources. So, it is a fair question, right? Should we have raised the tolls for those purposes when we do at this time find ourselves, really needing to raise tolls for the maintenance and preservation? But, it was a decision made to improve the Bay Area's overall mobility, and recognize that, bridge tolls are a very reliable source of funding and can help us achieve broader goals for mobility than just the bridges themselves.
Thank you, Rebecca. Here's a question about peak usage. What happened to the peak use charge that we had pre-pandemic? Have you looked at congestion-based pricing?
Yeah, thanks. So we're not proposing to change what is in the toll rate schedule. Congestion pricing has been suspended since the pandemic. We're not proposing to change that suspension of congestion pricing either. We're still waiting to kind of see how things shake out in terms of congestion at the variety of the bridges. It's also the case that the way we structured congestion pricing when it was introduced might not be how we would structure that today. And so it's probably best for us to kind of get through this piece and then look at congestion pricing over the next couple of years or so, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Okay. We have a question. So related to this presentation, does this mean that bridge maintenance is only paid by tolls? Isn't a portion of our taxes dedicated to roads, highways, and bridges?
So yes, a portion of your taxes are dedicated to roads, highways, and bridges, but with extremely limited exceptions, not these seven bridges. We fund these 7 bridges from toll revenue. So it's why it is so challenging.
And I'll just expand on that, a tiny bit. I mean, part of this goes back to the creation of BATA. And so, when the legislature formed BATA, they were transferring responsibility from the state to the Bay Area Toll Authority to handle bridge toll collection, to do electronic toll collection. So at the time, fast track was, very low, and BATA was able to really increase uptake of fast track. And then with the, various significant funding needs for the seismic retrofit program, we were given, responsibility for the bridges themselves and the toll and the authority to raise the tolls. And so the state does provide minimal, contribution, but ultimately BATA is responsible for keeping the bridges in a state of good repair. And with that responsibility, we have the authority to raise tolls to do so.
Okay, there's a question about how much of the current $7 bridge toll now goes to bridge maintenance and the other purposes sought in the proposed bridge toll increase. Do you want us to go back to the slide that shows that breakdown of where the $7 toll, that breakdown, or?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And it's probably better to go to the pie chart, actually. There we go. Nope. Stick on the pie chart. There we go. Thanks. So this shows all of the revenue and all of the expenses of the agency. And so you can see in here it's combined. We look at it when we budget on the revenue side, all of the toll revenue, whether it's coming in from RM1, 2, or 3, or from the seismic dollars, because the expenditures also happen that way. The RM2 and RM3 operating transfers are formulaic based on those pieces. And again, you can see in here the far and away the bulk of this is nearly 600 million annually of debt service. And that includes whether it was some bonds issued for RM2, but primarily bonds that have been issued for the seismic retrofit program.
Thank you, Derek. Okay, next question that we received. Do transit agencies pay tolls on the bridges to BATA?
We are actually researching that as we speak. Yes.
I believe the answer is they do not.
Okay.
I rarely like to say I'm completely certain, but I'm virtually certain they don't pay anything to use the bridges. There are a number of different relatively few sectors that don't have to pay, but and they are one. And I'm being told by the person who's much smarter than me that I am in fact correct. We don't charge transit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's 7:30. We can go ahead and move on to our next presentation on the HOV policy change. So we're gonna get our slides, and Rebecca, going ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you, Veronica. So now we're going to turn on to this HOV policy changes. In tandem with the proposed toll increase, BATA is also considering making changes to the rules that apply to HOV lanes, also known as carpool lanes. So somebody asked a question about this earlier. Can we remove the toll booths? And you can see here this current condition on the Richmond-San Rafael, and then a future image of what it will eventually look like with the toll booths removed. So that is the plan. And we're going to be working on this from 2026 is when we actually hope to launch open road tolling on the Richmond-San Rafael all the way through 2028. Next slide. Next slide, please. So this shift does require an update to our HOV policy to achieve 3 core goals: improve safety, increase person throughput, so that the number of people moved, in a given hour through the corridor, and enhance regional consistency regarding which HOVs qualify for a toll discount. Next slide. So the shift to open road tolling requires changes in lane configurations to minimize merging. Currently, vehicles with 3 or more occupants are allowed to use the dedicated HOV lanes at the toll plazas and receive a 50% fast track discount. 2 bridges, the Dumbarton and San Mateo, shown at the bottom of the chart, offer access and HOV discount to vehicles with just 2 or more passengers. This current approach is shown on the left-hand side. So you can see it's 3+ for all 5 of the bridges, and then 2+ for Dumbarton and San Mateo. The proposed update would standardize the discount at 3+. So in order to get the toll discount of 50%, vehicles would have to have 3 or more occupants. But it would allow vehicles to still use the lanes, the HOV lanes, with 2 or more occupants, except for the Bay Bridge. And the reason is that the Bay Bridge's HOV lanes are very well utilized. They carry a significant number of both carpools and buses, and opening them up to 2 or more passengers would cause significant congestion. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates the rationale for allowing HOV2s into the HOV lane on all bridges except the Bay Bridge. Again, the HOV2s would not get the discount, but they would get the travel time savings. And you can see what this is showing is the volume of HOVs during peak hours in March 2024. And the Bay Bridge is the one that is towering above all the rest at 4,450 vehicles per hour. And so you can just see that the demand is very high on the Bay Bridge. Next slide. Another benefit of this change is to enhance regional consistency, not just across the toll bridges, but also with Bay Area express lanes. So with this proposal, HOV3s on the bridges and on express lanes would be receiving the full benefit, either a 50% toll discount on the bridges or toll-free passage on the express lanes, while HOV2s would get a partial benefit, time savings on the bridges, or half price tolls on express lanes. So that's the way it works today, is that the HOV2s do get some benefit, they get a discount, but HOV3s don't pay on express lanes. So that concludes this portion of the presentation, and I'll turn it back to you, Veronica.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Just as with our last Q&A session, we'll take a few minutes to answer any clarifying questions that attendees might have about the HOV policy change. Please enter your questions into the Q&A box, or if you're live streaming through the YouTube comment box. And as a reminder, we will respond to questions only. If you have any comment that you'd like to make, please stay tuned. You could refer to the instructions in the chat box, or you can stay till the end where we'll be going over ways for you to make comments. Okay, going to our first question. Would HOV2 vehicles be required to pay 50% tolls in express lane on all Bay Area highways? And it looks like we have our colleague Lisa Klein who'd like to respond to this question. Lisa, go on ahead. Thank you.
Sure, I can answer this one. This proposal is just about the toll bridges, and in this case, the HOV2 vehicles on the toll bridges, they do not get a discounted toll. They already pay the full toll, and they would continue to pay the full toll on the toll bridges under this proposal, but they would be able to use the carpool lanes on all the bridges aside from the Bay Bridge. So that's a clarification. There are a few express lanes in the region where two-person carpools currently, there are some where they currently go free of charge, and there are some where they currently pay a 50% toll, and there is no proposal right now to change those rules on the fast track lanes that are on the highways.
Thank you, Lisa. Next question. What about EV discounts? Will they continue? EVs are allowed to set the riders to 3, is the question asker's understanding.
No change is proposed for the electric vehicle toll.
Next question. So it looks like, can you clarify, with the proposed HOV policies, what was the reason that the bridges with the least traffic had a different HOV policy?
I think the original reason was based on demand, right? That the Bay Bridge historically has had the highest person throughput, the highest number of carpools. So that was the rationale.
So it's 7:40 p.m. What we'll do is, well, it looks like we actually have another question. So can we go back to slide number 35 and hear an explanation of what the time savings at 50% toll box, what that means?
Sure. So I think they're referring to the HOV2 time savings at full toll. So the idea there is that the HOV3s would be the ones that would be eligible to get the discount, but HOV2s could still use the lane. And so, if you think about the Bay Bridge, for example, I live in the East Bay, so I'm very familiar with that. There's a dedicated carpool lane as you're approaching the HOV lane onto the bridge. And so you can still use that lane as you get onto the bridge as a HOV2. You just would be still paying the full toll. And some similar examples on other bridges.
Rebecca, maybe I could speak to the express lanes column because I think the question may have to do with the express lanes column there. And so what this column here is a little bit oversimplified, I would say, on certain corridors, such as on the express lane on I-880 and US 101 and State Route 237. This reflects the current policy. 3-person carpools are free, and 2-person carpools, and they receive the time savings for free, and 2-person carpools can use the lane, receive the time savings at a half-price toll. And that's the way it is today. And also today on the express lanes, for example, on Interstate 580 and Interstate 680, those 2-person carpools receive the time savings for free. So again, that express lane column is a comparative column. We are not proposing any changes to the carpool rates for express lanes or the carpool usage for express lanes. This is just a slightly oversimplified representation that reflects, again, Interstate 880, 237, and US 101 as they are today.
Great. Thank you, Lisa and Rebecca. Okay. We do not have any, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to next steps. Let's see. Rebecca will review the next steps and related timeline, and afterwards I'll review the ways that you can submit your comments on either or both of these proposals.
Great. Thank you, Veronica. So the next major milestone in this process is a public hearing. which is next Wednesday. It's going to be part of the Bay Area Toll Authority regular meeting. And so you can get information on how to participate in that on our website. And then public comment on the proposed increase in HOV policy is open through December 18th. But we are asking if people could submit their written comment by 5 p.m. December 3rd, then we can make sure that it's included in a staff kind of synthesis of what we've heard when the Bay Area Toll Authority Oversight Committee hears and is proposed to take action on December 11th. So if you want to have your voice heard, we really would ask that you communicate your thoughts by December 3rd, but everything that is communicated all the way through the day that BATA will be considering taking action on this on the 18th will be recorded for the record. And indeed, any kind of comment sent until December 17th, the night before, will be forwarded to the board members in writing. And yes, the BATA Oversight Committee, they will be referring their recommendation. So after that December 11th meeting to the BATA board. And then the 18th is when they are proposed to take their final action on this. But again, the proposed toll increase and the HOV policy change wouldn't take effect until January 1st, 2026. Next slide. And so this just kind of captures what I just walked through visually. We are here with the webinar, and then you can see just the next phase of this process, along with the customer education and the implementation phase, which would be taking place in 2025, assuming that BATA does move forward and approve this proposal. So with that, I think we're done with this slide and move on to the last one for you, Veronica.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. There are 3 ways to submit public comment to the proposed toll increase and HOV policy changes. As Rebecca mentioned, you can submit them at the November 20th public hearing, which will begin at 9:35 a.m. Or you could send them via email to info@bayareametro.gov. Or you can also mail your comments into the MTC BATA Public Information Office. Let's see. As Rebecca said, we're repeating this just so that it sticks. Comments that are transmitted by 5 p.m. on December 17th will be shared with the BATA board before they take action on the proposed toll increase the following day, December 18th. And finally, members of the public may provide public comments in person or on Zoom under the toll increase agenda item at the December 18th BATA meeting. With that, this does conclude our presentation, and we will stay on for a few more minutes for people who might have questions on either of the proposals. And at 8 o'clock, we will conclude tonight's webinar. And a point of clarification with regard to those who might choose to mail in your comments. Please note that the address is 375 Beale Street, Suite 800, San Francisco, California, 94105. Again, that's 375 Beale Street, Suite 800, San Francisco, California, 94105. We'll also go ahead and post this in both the webinar chat box as well as our YouTube comment box. And this information is also available on MTC's website that we have posted links in the comment box as well. We have received a question. Can owners of old fast track transponders, such as those where the battery is run out, or the old brick transponders, can they simply exchange them at a Costco or Walgreens store, or must they purchase a new one?
You can't exchange them at a retail location, but you can bring them into the Bay Area Fast Track Customer Service Center at 375 Beale, and you can get a replacement. We do ask that people return the old ones.
Thank you, Rebecca.
And I'll add one more thing. You can just order a new one, and then we can also send you online, and we can send you like a bag to return the old one by mail.
Great.
And please do return them because we don't want those batteries in landfills.
With the time that we have remaining, we'd like to end with the video that we had earlier in our presentation. So let's go ahead.
The San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge, along with the Antioch, Benicio Martinez, Carquinez.
Oh shit. What happened now?
Richmond San Rafael, San Mateo Hayward, and Dumbarton bridges are structurally sound and in good repair. State law requires BATA working with Caltrans to keep them that way. That is why BATA is considering a toll increase that would be phased in starting in 2026 to fund a toll bridge capital program that includes nearly $2 billion of investment to keep Bay Area bridges in tip-top shape for many decades to come. The additional money from the toll increase will be used only for the maintenance, rehabilitation, and operation of the bridges. While the east span of the Bay Bridge is just 11 years old, the west span has been in service for 88 years. Other senior citizens include the Richmond San Rafael Bridge and the eastbound Carquinez Bridge. Many of our other bridges are now well into middle age. Carrying more than 200 million vehicle trips back and forth each year, linking people to services, workers to jobs, students to school, tourists to Bay Area attractions, and goods to markets. The toll bridges are a cornerstone of the Bay Area economy. What does it take to keep these workhorses working? A lot of people, as well as steel, concrete, scaffolding, trucks, tools, and a whole lot of paint. The bridges include more than 22 million square feet of painted surfaces that must be constantly maintained. Exposure to saltwater, fog, and other harsh marine conditions make the fight against steel corrosion a never-ending battle. In addition to paint, there are cables, joints, decks, fenders that protect the bridges from damage caused by ships, electrical and mechanical systems, tolling equipment, and much more. The toll increase BATA is considering would raise tolls on each of the 7 state-owned bridges by 50 cents a year from 2026 through 2030. That would spread the increase over 5 years rather than impose a big one-time jump. Tolls for all regular 2-axle cars and trucks would increase from $8 to $8.50 on January 1st, 2026, and then rise 50 cents a year, topping out at $10.50 in 2030. Tolls for large freight trucks and other vehicle-trailer combinations with 3 or more axles would rise by 50 cents per year per axle from 2026 through 2030. The toll increase proposal also includes a tiered rate structure aimed at encouraging more customers to pay electronically with FasTrack, as this form of payment carries lower overhead than payment through a license plate account or returning payment with an invoice received by mail. A similar 3-tier toll structure has been in place at the Golden Gate Bridge since 2014. Under the BATA proposal, customers at the state-owned bridges starting in 2027 would pay an extra 25 cents for using a pre-registered license plate account and an extra $1 for invoiced tolling. In addition to a phased-in toll hike, BATA also is considering updates to the policies for high occupancy vehicles on approaches to the state-owned toll bridges. These updates also would take effect in January of 2026. The proposed policy change would establish a 3-person requirement for half-price tolls during weekday commute periods at all 7 bridges. The proposed updates also would allow vehicles with 2 occupants to use the carpool lanes on the approaches to the Antioch, Benicia Martinez, Carquinez, Dumbarton, Richmond San Rafael, and San Mateo Hayward bridges. These 2 occupant vehicles would not receive the 50% carpool discount, but would be able to use the carpool lanes to save time traveling through the toll plazas. Use of the carpool lanes on approaches to the Bay Bridge would still require a minimum of 3 occupants. With the now obsolete toll booth soon to be removed as part of a coming transition to open road tolling, the carpool policy changes aim to optimize new lane configurations and improve safety on the bridge approaches by minimizing weaving between lanes. What questions do you have about the proposed toll increase? What about a 3-person requirement for half-price tolls at all the state-owned toll bridges? We look forward to hearing from you and answering your questions about toll bridge preservation, about FasTrack and tiered tolling rates, and about the best ways to use the carpool lane approaches to each bridge.
This concludes tonight's